Well, welcome everybody. This is a beginning backpacking class offered by the Mother Lode Chapter of the Sierra Club. That's the local chapter. So I'm going to go over a few preliminaries here. My name's Mike Ranta. I'm just a host tonight. Your presenters are, we'll talk about them in a minute. These are the assumptions that were made for the class. We're assuming that y'all have significant wilderness or other hiking experience and are already reasonably competent in a daytime wilderness settings. Now, if you don't meet those requirements, you don't have to go home. You can stay. The presenters tonight are May Chaplin, Bruce Notorious, and Stan Jones. They're all experienced backpackers and they're all certified Sierra Club hike leaders. So here's a list of the topics we're going to go over. May is going to cover shelter, sleeping gear, packs, food and cooking. Bruce is going to cover clothing, first aid, sanitation, personal needs, and weight management. That's weight management for your pack. Stan's going to cover navigation, water and hydration, hiking poles, and bear proofing, and then we'll wrap things up. So I'm going to mute everybody. Yes. And May is our first presenter, so I guess I should unmute May. Actually, once again, it says, May, you have to unmute yourself. I don't understand this, but that's the way it's working. So see if you can do that. Oh, wait, okay. Oh, no, sorry. There you go.
There we go.
All right.
Hi, everyone. Yes, the fun and lovely world of Zoom. It's good to see so many people here tonight. I apologize. I was running a little bit late. I do work at Sac State, and I've been in Zoom meetings since, I think, 8 o'clock this morning. So if I seem a little zoomed out, that's why. I might actually... I'll see how long I stay after I finish with my portion, but if I leave, it's not that I don't want to stay for the whole thing, it's that I'm literally tired of staring at a computer screen all day. So again, it's good to see all of you. If you hear a weird noise in the background, I have a pet parrot. He's in the other room with the door closed. That's as quiet as I can make him. So I apologize in advance for that. Like Mike said, I am a Sierra Club volunteer leader. Some of you might recognize me. I do have a very part-time job at REI, the one here in Sacramento near Cal Expo. So if I look familiar and you're trying to place me, it could be that you've seen me in the camping section there. And I promise I will not talk too much about REI, other than to mention, you know, we do have a lot of camping gear. Pretty much everything I'm going to show you, I purchased at REI or through REI, just because it's a good way to get gear. And if you're not a member, you should consider joining the co-op. Same thing with the Sierra Club. If you're not a Sierra Club member, definitely, you know, it's a worthy organization, especially in terms of kind of activism and stewardship. So enough about me. I'll go ahead and I'll start briefly with talking about the types of, I have on my list to go over shelter first. And there are different types of tents that you can use for backpacking. Obviously, if you think about, you know, the pack and what goes in a pack and everything that you're going to be carrying with you, there are some different considerations you do need to make when selecting a backpacking tent. The two biggest things are going to be weight, in terms of how heavy is the tent, and also how well does it kind of compress, or how well does it pack down. I will say, when you go look at tents at any outdoor store and you see them in their big storage sacks, you might think, oh my gosh, how is this a backpacking tent when the bag is like this big? There are ways you can make them smaller. Most people don't hike with their tents in the bag that it comes in, because it just can be a bit cumbersome. Most backpacking tents, you can get anything from a 1-person on up to, we do sell a 4-person tent, which is gigantic. You know, I carry a 1-person tent. It's a 1-person plus, meaning it has a little bit of extra size, just because I like to be able to store my gear inside of my tent with me. I'll be honest, because of that, that does add weight. So anytime you're adding space, that tends to add weight. It's always, backpacking is always kind of a trade-off between weight and comfort and space in your bag. So there are all sorts of things that you're kind of, it's like playing Tetris in a backpack sometimes as you're trying to fit everything together. And I thought I had my tent sitting right next to me. You probably see me looking down. I don't, but I'm gonna go grab a couple of them. They're just right in a cupboard behind me. I will be right back. So I have two different ones that I'm going to show you. Again, you're going to look at this and think, oh my gosh, this thing is huge, because it is. This is the Half Dome 1 Plus. It is a backpacking tent. I do not obviously pack with it in this bag. It has different sections in here. It has the tent and then the rain fly, which is the cover that goes over the tent to protect it from getting water on it. I actually take those out of the bag and kind of make them really small, and I have straps that I strap down, and then I can put them in my pack. And then the poles I just kind of slide on the side. One of the things that I was looking for in a tent was that extra space without having to carry a two-person tent, because for one person like me, that's just too much. I do have a two-person tent when I backpack with someone else, and then we share the load. You know, they will carry the fly and I'll carry the tent, or you know, vice versa. So there are other things. If you're backpacking in a group, sometimes you can share the load, which is nice. The other thing to consider in a tent is you'll see, if you read the description, sometimes it'll say things like freestanding or semi-freestanding. A freestanding tent is one that has poles that go to each of the four corners, and you can basically, you still have to stake it down to the ground, but it can basically stand up and maintain its structure with the poles. You don't need to do anything else. Semi-freestanding tents can be a little bit trickier to set up, because they typically have one side of the tent that's freestanding, meaning it's got the poles to keep its structure, and the other side is not. It has something called guy lines, which are like little, let's say little strings that you attach to something else to keep it secure. So and you do have to be kind of careful where you're setting that up, because if there's nothing to attach the guy lines to, the tent will kind of flap around in the breeze a little bit. Semi-freestanding tents, here's a question for you to think about in your head. Because they have less poles, they're going to be lighter. So a lot of the more lighter weight tents that you can find at outdoor stores are going to be semi-freestanding, meaning they're not going to be able to stand on their own. So those are kind of the breakdown of just general tent considerations. And I know I'm going quickly, but there's a lot to kind of cover. I will give you a chance to ask me questions as I get through each of these little things these topics that I'm talking about. The other thing, you may have seen people, if you're out, you know, camping and you see somebody sleeping in something that looks like the way I describe it is like a cloth box. It's like a bivy, that's called a bivy sack. And what that is it's basically like a cloth box that goes around your sleeping bag, and it just gives you a little bit of extra protection from the elements. Some of them have something that you can zip over your head. They're very light. They're usually about like this big too. They're tiny. I personally have used one once and I didn't like it because it made me claustrophobic. So that's where the box kind of picture comes from in my head. But they are very light. They're good if you just need something as like a quick emergency shelter type thing. They work well for that. Some people really like them. You know, a lot of people who get into the ultralight backpacking carry bivy sacks. As you can tell by the size of my tent, I am not an ultralight backpacker. I tend to pack on the heavy side just because I like to be comfortable when I'm out there, which isn't for everyone. You know, some people like to carry less weight. The other tent, just so you can see a size comparison, the other tent I have is a two-person tent. And this one's a little bit lighter. It has a different pole structure. It is freestanding. It's actually only a little bit heavier than my one-person tent and a little bit smaller. I will say of the two, this one was the more expensive of the two because it is a little bit lighter and it is a little bit, you can already tell even in its storage bag, it's a little bit smaller. And this is the, it's made by XPED and it's their Lyra 2 tent. And again, I use this one if I want extra space, if I'm going on a shorter trip and I don't have as much stuff in my pack, or if I'm going to someone else and we just want one tent. So that's kind of a quick rundown on tents. All tents will come with some sort of storage bag. They all come with poles. They will come with the rainfly and the tent. So, and you can read, usually when you go to a website, it will give you, if you click on the technical specs, it'll tell you a little bit about the weight. So you'll see the packed weight, which is when it's packed in its storage sack, and then the minimum trail weight, which often doesn't include the rain fly, because sometimes people won't take the fly with them, which I don't recommend, especially around here since the weather can be a bit dicey sometimes. Are there any questions about tents?
You carry a footprint.
Oh yes, the footprint, which of course I don't have with me either. I do carry a footprint. That was a good question, Mike. A footprint is basically like a tarp that's the same shape, the same dimensions as your particular tent. And it does two things. It prolongs the life of the tent. You put it under the tent. Back before footprints, people used to just use tarps for the, I know we did that as a kid when I was camping. It prolongs the life of the tent. It kind of protects the bottom from getting wear and tear. And then also if you're somewhere where there's a lot of moisture in the air, it keeps that moisture out, you know, from seeping in on the ground. Like, you know, when you walk on the grass in the morning and it's been a kind of it's been a more humid night, the grass can be wet. Well, if you're sleeping on that, it can seep in through the bottom of your tent. So I do recommend a footprint, or at the very least a tarp. Footprints are going to be lightweight. They're usually very, very small, and you can easily fit them in your pack. Most tents, you have to buy the footprint separately. Most of them do not come with a footprint. And there are certain brands of tents, such as Kelty, that don't make footprints. So that's also something to consider. So you might see the Kelty tent is cheap, but it doesn't have a footprint at all. So you do have to carry a tarp with something like that. And it'll tell you when you're reading about the tent whether or not it comes with a footprint. Like I said, most of them don't. You do have to buy them separately. I see a question in the chat. And it says, do you ever go without a tent? And let's see, and just sleep in the open? I have. I don't often do that anymore, just because I don't know why. I just like to be inside. I will say this tent has an option called Stargazer mode, where I can peel back the rain fly on both sides and look up at the sky if I still want to be in my tent. I just don't like a lot of bugs on me. I'll be honest. I know that sounds strange as a backpacker, but I like to be in a tent, mainly because of bugs. They like me. They like to eat my skin. I don't like that. And then we have another question. Do you clean your tent regularly? Yes, I do. When I get back, I have a little, we sell them, or you can use any little brush. It's a little tent brush and a little dustpan, and I just sweep it out. I also shake it out. We also sell like a tent wash at REI that you can use to get some of the gunk off. And then I tend to air my tent out before I put it back in its storage sack, just to keep it from getting musty. I will say with storing tents, especially since the weather's been so hot lately, you probably don't want to keep them in a garage, because that can, if it gets too hot and if it's compressed in its sack for too long, that can kind of destroy some of the sealant on it and cause damage, or it can accelerate the tent's aging process. So that's why I keep mine in my house in a closet. It's just kind of a weird thing. Let's see, another criteria, can you sit up in it? Yes, for tents, sometimes you can sit up in them, sometimes you can't. Depends on the peak height. So you want to look at the dimensions for the peak height. The reason why I got the Half Dome Plus, that bigger tent, is because I'm short, I'm 5'3". I can easily sit up in that. I can also almost kind of squat on my knees in it as well, which just makes, if I need to change clothing, it makes it a little bit easier. This tent is a 2-person tent, just a little bit smaller peak height than my 1-person tent. That's also why it's a little bit on the lighter side. So it will say the peak height and the dimensions as well. You're not going to be able to stand up in a backpacking tent. So that's definitely a no. Even most car camping tents, like the smaller ones, you can't stand up in them. Let's see, I don't see any more.
So Abdul, did you have a question?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I am just observing. This is first time, right? Some of the words even I am not able to completely get it, but that's fine. I will ask later.
Okay.
Yeah, you can stop me at any time here. I don't see any more chat questions. Does anybody who's not using chat want to ask a question about tents? before I go on to, I think,
I don't see any raised
sleeping
hands.
bags and pads next.
Yeah, I think you're okay.
Okay. I do not have my sleeping bags to show you just because they're in the bird room and the bird's cage is kind of on top of where I keep them, so I couldn't pull them out, mainly because I've been in Zoom meetings all day and I just haven't had a chance to go in there. Sleeping bags, that's another, you want to do your research on your sleeping bags before you buy them, because there are many different things to consider. The first is going to be, you'll notice when you look at sleeping bags online, or if you go into an outdoor store like REI, you'll see they have different temperature ratings. So you'll see a bag that maybe is a 30 degree versus one that's a 20 degree. So the numbers kind of work in reverse. The larger the number, the less warm the bag will keep you. So a 30 degree bag isn't going to keep you as warm as a 20 degree bag. And then within that, they'll also have, if you look in their specs, or if you read at REI, we have little cards on the sleeping bags back there, you can read about them. And it'll tell you their tested comfort rating. It'll tell you the lowest they can go where you can be comfortable and the highest temperature you can be in and be comfortable. And that's usually a range. And you'll notice some of the more expensive bags, their range is a little bit better, or they can go a little bit lower than some of the others. So that's always a good thing to look at. Generally for around here, I have a 30 degree down bag that I use. I also have a 20 degree synthetic, and I'll talk about the difference between down and synthetic in just a minute. I have a 20 degree synthetic bag I use if I need it, which honestly for me, I tend to sleep warm, is not that often. The other thing with sleeping bags is there's down versus synthetic. I will say the synthetic technology is getting better, and they are getting more comfortable to down in terms of how warm they keep you. Another benefit of synthetic is it doesn't really matter if it gets a little bit of moisture on it. Down, if it gets wet, it can tend to, it loses its loft and you get colder. Now that doesn't mean you can take a synthetic bag out and roll around in the rainstorm in it. That would not be good, but it does give you a little bit of extra protection from moisture. And if you notice, if you look at down bags, sometimes in the foot, like the toe box, the foot area, they have like an extra protection to protect your feet from hitting the sides of your tent. Because again, moisture can seep in through there sometimes. So that's why you might notice a different color at the foot box on the bottom. And then the other benefit, the benefit to down, is it does tend to keep you a little bit warmer. It's also a lot lighter and a lot more compressible. So I'll give my down bag that I have. It's, it's a normal, it's a mummy shaped bag, meaning it's going to look like a mummy, like the shape of a mummy. They've got the wider shoulders and then the narrow feet. That one folds down to be about this big and it weighs 1 pound. My synthetic bag is huge. It's not a mummy shape. It's like it's called a spoon shape, so it's a little bit wider. That makes it bulkier, and it also makes it a lot heavier. So my synthetic bag, which is a 20 degree bag, weighs about 3 pounds, and it compresses to like this, which is, I use it more for car camping. I don't use it for backpacking as much, just because it's kind of a pain. I only use it if I know I'm gonna be cold, and then I make it work. So that's, synthetic's cheaper, but it's also bulkier. It's also a little bit heavier for the most part. And in some cases, it doesn't keep you as warm. I just lost my train of thought. The other thing with sleeping bags is down tends to be more expensive. Synthetic does tend to be a little bit cheaper. So if you are looking for a synthetic bag, I will say there's a company called Marmot, like the animal. They have an Elite Eco series. Their bags for synthetic tend to pack down pretty well. So, that is something to consider if you're on a budget, is that Marmot Elite Eco series. We usually recommend that for like beginning backpackers, especially if you're not sure that you want to invest in something like a down bag, which can be a bit more pricey. Let's see. Excuse me, the best way to clean a sleeping bag. We sell like a down wash that you can use on them if you have a down bag. And that's typically how I clean mine. I also use, you can also buy a protective liner that goes on the inside of your sleeping bag. Some of them will actually keep you cooler, believe it or not, and they add that extra layer of protection so you're not getting all your dirt and sweat from hiking in the bag. You can also, and sometimes I do this with my 30 degree bag, you can buy a liner that adds warmth. So instead of buying 2 different sleeping bags, sometimes you can buy one and get a liner that you can put in there to get extra warmth. So there are different ways of kind of working with the bag that you have to make it fit your needs. Let's see, a couple other things with sleeping bags. If anybody's a side sleeper, you sleep on your side, the mummy bags tend to be a bit constraining just because they're so narrow. So then there are ones that are more rectangular or spoon shape. Nemo is a company that makes those. Somebody said, yes, my down bag is in the 1 pound range. It was a very expensive bag, but I love it. It's the REI Magma 30. They also make a 15-degree bag that's, I think, about 1.5 pounds. So for the side sleepers, you might want to consider a different shape. I will say that adds bulk and it adds weight. Because if you think about more material, more weight, more bulk. And same thing with the warmer bags. They're also heavier because they have more inside of them. They have more fill inside of them. So everything, like I said, in backpacking is kind of a trade-off between comfort, weight, packability. Let's see, I don't see any other questions. Nobody's asked me about pillows, but I will tell you that you can buy little travel backpacking pillows that compress to be about this big. You can also, some people will just take a stuff sack and fill it with clothes. I personally don't find that very comfortable. I have a pillow. Like I said, I like to be comfortable. Any questions on sleeping bags for me? It's like my students, silence.
Yeah. Maybe nobody knows how to raise their hand.
Raise their hand. I saw some in the chat. If not, that's okay. So I can just go on.
Oh, wait, there are a couple in chat now.
Oh yeah, I've been answering those kind of as they pop up. Oh, here's one. Which one is better for being warmer? Typically down's gonna keep you a little bit warmer. And that's also another reason why it's more expensive. Excuse me. Some of the synthetic bags are getting a little bit better with that. But again, down is probably, if you're really concerned, down is going to be the better option. You will pay for it though. It is more pricey. Oh, and for the side sleeper, there's a brand called Nemo. I'll just type it in the chat here. They make something, they make bags that are called a spoon shape. So they're gonna, if you look at them, they're pretty wide. My synthetic bag is a Nemo and it's that spoon shape. And that's one of the reasons why it's so big. And then there's also another brand called Big Agnes. They make a series of bags that you have an option to unzip each side and make it a little bit wider. So it makes it more rectangular in shape. Or if you don't want the mummy shape, you zip it closed. And then the last thing to consider with sleeping bags is your height. Most of them come in different sizes. You want to get one that fits your height range, because if there's a gap between your feet and the bottom of the bag, that can let cold air in and draft in. And we know what happens if our feet or our heads get cold. We get cold. So you always want to, you don't want to try, if you're me, 5'3", you don't want a long sleeping bag. That's just extra weight you have to carry and it's not going to keep you very warm. And then I do have my sleeping pad to show you. I apologize. Normally I'm a bit more organized. It's been interesting couple of weeks for me. So sleeping pads, here's mine. It's a little bulky, but I put it on the bottom of my pack. I have straps that I strap it on. And this one is self-inflating. And I don't think you can see on here, no. So there are different things to consider with the sleeping pad. One is, again, weight and compressibility. A lot of pads are a lot smaller than this. Typically, you sacrifice a little bit of comfort with that. The other thing with sleeping bags is there's a number called an R value, and you'll see that in the technical specs. The bigger that number, the thicker the pad. So that does two things. It makes you more comfortable, and it also provides an extra layer between you and the ground, which will keep you warmer. So, if you're someone that tends to be cold all the time, you might want to invest or find a way to carry a thicker pad, because that's one thing that will help you. That will help you stay warm is that thicker pad. This one's kind of in the middle. It's an R value of 3.2. That's not terribly thin, it's not terribly thick. I will say if you're a side sleeper, you also might want to get a different pad, a thicker pad, so your hips and shoulders don't end up hurting. My sleeping bag goes inside my pack, and it goes, when I get to the, I'm going to show you right now since I have it. Most packs are going to have something called a sleeping bag compartment on the bottom. I compress my bag and it fits in here. My pad, I don't know if you can see it, there are these little straps. I just strap my sleeping pad to the outside of my pack because my pad's too big to fit in my pack. There are some that you can definitely fit inside of the pack. I just have a bigger pad. Okay, so that answered that one. Yeah, down bags don't help for moisture as much. No, you do have to be a bit careful with that. So I don't know that I'd sleep outside in a down bag if it was somewhere with a lot of moisture in the air. And then again with the pads, it's that R value, whether or not you want self-inflating. Some pads you have to blow them up. Others will come with their storage sack or their stuff sack can be turned into a sack that you blow into a couple of times, attach it to your pad and squeeze it, and it inflates your pack. So there are different ways, or your pad, there are different ways of inflating your sleeping pad. Mine's self-inflating. I like that. I just throw it in my tent and walk away and come back and it's done. Any questions about pads?
Well, for what it's worth, I think sleeping is where you should put your money. Because if you don't sleep well tonight, you're not going to enjoy the trip. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's definitely true, especially if you're cold. Because you can only put on so many layers of clothes, and if you run out of all the clothes that you brought and you're still cold, then you're in trouble. Yeah, so that's why knowing your sleeping habits and kind of knowing if you tend to sleep warmer or colder also helps. But there are, if you go into, I said I wasn't going to talk about REI, but if you go into REI, any of the camping sales associates can help you kind of select the right gear for you. They also, if you set an appointment, have individual outfitting classes, or not classes, they have someone who will walk around the store with you and help prepare you for a trip. But you have to book that in advance because, if you just go in, we can't help you like that because we have to help other customers. Okay, so I don't see any hands. I don't see any questions in the chat. It looks like my next topic is packs. So I have my pack right here. With a pack, I know it's very tempting to just go for the whatever option you read about and get good reviews about online, or the cheaper option sometimes. I will say you probably should take the time to get a professional pack fit. Here we go again. We do them at REI. It really is helpful. I can't tell you how many times, either in my experience as a hiker or just my experience working where I work, where people come in and say they enjoyed their trip, but their pack just didn't fit, and it made them kind of miserable during the hiking portions of it. And a lot of the times it's because the pack they have, they borrowed it from someone else. They just bought an Osprey pack online because everybody loves Osprey, and it didn't fit them right. You do have to get a pack fit. And so what a pack fit does is we will measure your torso length, which again, you might be surprised at what your torso length is. I'm 5'3". Most women my height have a small or extra small torso. I have a medium torso. Just means I have short little legs. But I have a long torso. And that's something that we will measure. And then within each torso size, it's a range. So we can actually adjust, most packs you can adjust the back to exactly fit your torso. And I'll kind of show you, I know it's hard to see on the little tiny Zoom screen. But if you look in the back here, this right here, I can move this up or down. And this is a medium size, so along that medium range, I can make it shorter or I can make it longer. Other brands of packs, you'll have like a small or extra small size, and we can make it so it fits you. But you do have to get measured. You do have to go in. All pack brands fit differently. Ospreys, this is an Osprey, tend to fit longer and narrower in terms of how they proportion the weight. Other brands like Gregory is another popular brand. They tend to proportion the weight shorter and wider. So sometimes it kind of depends on your shape too, which bag works. And we usually will have you try a couple on and we put weight in them so you can see. So definitely get a pack fit. The other thing to consider with packs is do you want something that's going to be a lighter weight pack, or do you want something that's a little heavier? Again, there's a trade-off. Lighter weight packs, this is a heavier weight pack because you can probably tell it's got a lot of extra support and padding in the shoulder straps, because I like to be comfortable. I also know that I carry more weight when I backpack, so I need a pack that can hold that weight comfortably. It's got a pretty substantial hip belt. The hip belt's an important piece because about 80% of your weight will end up being on your hips. So you definitely, if you have any back issues, you definitely want to make sure that you have a pack with a more substantial hip belt, or even some of them even have extra lumbar support. I like to have pockets on the side. All of this is adding weight. So some of the lighter weight packs, you'll have a skimpy hip belt. You won't have the pockets. You can't really adjust much here. And the shoulder straps are usually a lot thinner. It also means they can't carry as much weight comfortably. So again, kind of knowing what you're going to be packing will help you with that pack determination. And having a conversation, with anyone who's helping you pick a pack as well. The other thing is liter capacity. All packs have that number after their name. So this is an Aura 65. That means it can carry 65 liters of gear, which is quite a bit, really, if you think about it. And I know it maybe doesn't look like it. That's because everything's compressed. So I went for a little bit of a larger pack because I like to do extended trips. I can still use this on 1 or 2 nights. If I don't fill it up, it has straps that I can compress everything down to keep the load kind of, compressed and more balanced that way. So again, talking with someone at an outdoor store and telling them, what kind of trips you're planning on doing. If you ever envision doing longer trips, they'll help you pick the correct size. Generally, I would say most people get anywhere from, at the smallest, about a 40-liter pack to on up to the largest would be, we sell an 88-liter pack, which is just insanely huge. You probably don't need anything that big unless you're taking your whole house with you. So again, most people get within that range. I would say if you're just doing a couple nights, maybe 3 or 4, you could get away with a 50-liter to a 65-liter pack, depending on what you're carrying. So that's kind of what to consider there with the packs. And don't go in thinking you're going to get an Osprey or a Gregory, because it may not fit you. That's the other thing. People get their heart set on a certain pack because they read great reviews about it, and then they try it on and it just isn't comfortable. Just like Mike said with the sleeping, you want your sleeping arrangement to be comfortable. You definitely want your pack to be comfortable, or it just makes for a really awkward trip. Okay. Oh, good. Yes. Thank you for some unbiased reviews. Bruce put in the comments. Let me see. I have to scroll up for a little bit. So anyway, yeah, it is a big difference when you get fitted in a pack. I think that's from Maribel, Claudia. Recommendations for extra padding. The metal bar. So does your pack, I'm not sure I'm understanding this, do you have a metal bar at the bottom of yours? Is it an external frame pack? I'm not sure who asked that. I will say for the padding, usually the packs will have like padding in them. It may be that pack, for whatever reason, doesn't. If it's an older bag, sometimes they have less support or less. What's an Osprey? You mean the internal frame at the bottom, this bar? Because you shouldn't be able to feel this when it's on your back. So that could mean that the pack isn't fitting correctly. Yeah, you shouldn't be able to feel anything in the frame. In some packs, and the frames now are all internal. Like if you notice I'm pushing on this and it's not collapsing, that's because the frame that supports it is all internal. They used to be external.
It's at the bottom. It's a Ren 65.
Oh, the Ren. Okay, yeah, that's kind of a one-size-fits-all pack. So it may be that it's just not adjusted in the right place for you, or it just doesn't fit. I'd have to see it on you.
Okay.
But yeah, that bag, if you look at it, it's got all these little things that you can move the torso up and down on the back. And that is one of the few Osprey ones that isn't torso specific. It's a one-size-fits-all. Okay. And if they work, they're great. If they don't, then.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
And then one last thing with packs, since I don't see any other questions. They do come in men and women's. There's really not too much of a difference. It's typically in how the straps are proportioned. and where some of these, like where the sternum strap is, you know, can slide up and down. Women's packs sometimes will be a tiny bit smaller on the capacity, but not much. It's usually the way the shoulder straps are proportioned and the way they fit around your body. Some women wear men's packs because of the way they're shaped. Some men actually wear women's packs because of the way they're shaped. Did you have a question, Stan? Oh, I think he's muted.
I don't think.
I saw him talking, but I can't unmute him.
Just a second. I gotta find him. Okay. Okay, Stan, you can unmute yourself. I think it's frustrating.
I don't know why I know they changed Zoom. It is frustrating.
You're on, Stan. Maybe he's not.
Oh, okay. I'm muted.
No, you're not.
Oh, okay.
Did you have a question?
No.
No, I thought you were raising your hand. I'm sorry.
Okay, now you're muted again.
Let's see, if somebody who already has a pack, I would say if you didn't buy it from REI, we cannot help you. Just because let's say you bought it from the Osprey website, they don't pay our salary. But yeah, if you bought it from REI, bring it in and we'll help you fit it. Okay, I don't see any more. I love this pack, by the way. I upgraded from one that was a little bit older and had like this weird combination of external, internal frame. This is the most comfortable thing I've ever worn. I've carried almost up to about 38 pounds in it and not even felt it. So a good pack can really make for a good experience. And last but not least, it looks like I'm going over food, and I'm going to skip the bear canister because I know Bruce is going to do that later. And what I have, if I get the right box, like I said, I just grabbed all of my camping stuff right before this started. So with food, a couple things to consider. Oh, here's my pillow, in case you're wondering what a pillow compresses down to. And here's the footprint. I wanted to see the tent's footprint. So my cook set is all in this little pot. I chose a non-integrated system, meaning the way I boil my water is to have a separate pot. Integrated systems, you have like a jet boil, you have the pot and the stove all as one thing. I actually like to be able to do a little bit of cooking versus just the freeze-dried food, which is why I got a pot, because it's just a little bit easier to get into. And let me just, you can see it turns into its little, got my handle here. And then on the inside, I can store, it's pretty lightweight. I have my lightweight cup for my coffee. Comes with a bowl, and then my silverware is elsewhere. And then this is my stove in this little tiny pouch. And I have the Pocket Rocket 2 Deluxe. I don't know if you can see that. You just see this part here just screws into one of those fuel canisters. And the canisters are universal. This is an MSR stove, but I can use Jetboil fuel with it. It's all the same. And then this they have these little legs that unfold. And then I would, I just put my pot on it like that. Again, this is not an integrated system. This is just a stove. And then this is how you turn it on once it's connected to the fuel. You just use that. I can either light it with a lighter, or this one has a push button ignition as well. I will say any stoves with this push button, these can sometimes be a little bit finicky in the wind. So you always want to carry a lighter or some other fire source with you, just to make sure you can start your stove. Because you don't want to be eating cold food unless you like that. I typically do the freeze-dried meals. We have there is a variety out there. Some of the companies like Good to Go make vegan and vegetarian and gluten-free options, so they are getting a little bit better in terms of what they offer. Or you can get something like the Mountain House pouches, and those are going to be more of your standard, just kind of backpacking food. Most of them come as 2 servings. Good to Go makes single servings. That's another reason why I like it, because they do the single servings. And you don't freak out when you look at the packaging and read the ingredients or the nutritional value. When you're backpacking, you burn a lot of calories. So typically you need to eat more calories at the end of the day. So backpacking those freeze-dried meals, they're going to be higher in sodium and higher in calories than like a normal meal would. Which is why I always laugh when they say to put them in your emergency kits, because you don't want to be eating those for a lot of days if you're not doing a lot of exercise or activities, just because they are not terribly healthy that way. They make, breakfast, lunch, dinners. I usually do oatmeal for my breakfast. I also like coffee, so I have this little coffee drip, and it just clips onto my cup, and I just pour everything over. And this is nice and small. It fits underneath my fuel canister. You can do cooking. You can take pasta, couscous, anything that's a hard cheese sometimes that you can use that first night. There are ways, tuna pouches. There goes the parrot. I think he's reached his maximum of me talking at the computer today. I'm really sorry about that. His name's Pele. He's a stinker. So that's kind of food in a nutshell. People always ask how much fuel to carry. I will say there's a math formula you have to do to get the exact weight and amount. You can find it on pretty much any website. If you just type in how much backpacking fuel do I need, and it kind of depends on how many times you're going to be turning on your stove, what you're going to be doing with it. Are you just boiling water? How quickly does it boil water? Usually I just use like a medium-sized canister, and I'm fine. And then anything perishable, you want to try and eat that right away. And you also want to make sure that you're packing out all your trash with your food, including your apple cores, banana peels, pretty much anything that's not native to the environment. So that's another consideration with food, is trying to consider how you're going to store your food waste to pack it out. Orange peels, tangerine peels, all of that has to come out with you. Which I know when I was a kid, my dad used to say, just throw it on the ground, it's biodegradable. But it's anything that's foreign to that environment that can pose a threat to the animals that live there. And I think that, oh, and you also want to make sure you eat, I made a note here, at least 100 feet away from your tent for a variety of reasons, and Bruce will cover the big reason for that later. Or I think it was either Bruce or Stan when he was doing the bear proofing. Yes.
Just a minute.
Okay. Are we good?
Stan put a hand up.
I think Abdul has a hand up too.
Okay. Trying to unmute Stan. There he goes.
I wish I could mute my bird.
Yeah. Okay, Stan, you're on.
Oh, I just unmuted myself.
Did you have a question?
I just wanted to say that I'm doing the bear proofing and not Bruce. That's
Okay.
it. Mhm.
All right.
Sorry for the interruption.
Oh yeah, I'm at the end of my quick spiel. I think Abdul had a question though.
Well, I see a hand up for Christina, so let me unmute her.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So back to the tents real quick.
Yes.
What do you do if you're out and your tent gets wet and you're trying to pack up and go in the morning? What do you guys do when you're out like that?
I usually just kind of shake it off and put it in my bag.
Put it in wet, just wrap it up wet?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
unless I have something extra I can wrap around it. But sometimes I will have an extra like baggie that I carry.
Okay.
Because they are going to be sometimes they are a little wet and dirty. And I tend to, when I pack, Bruce is going to go over kind of weight distribution and packing. But I have, my bear canister kind of goes right in the middle of my tent. And then I told you I separate it out by the tent and the rain fly and fold each section up small. And I put them on either side of the bear canister. So they're not really touching anything else in my pack.
Okay. All right. Does it happen a lot that the tent gets wet, or is that a rare occurrence?
If it's raining, but it's hard to say. It just depends on the
I meant for the damp from the ground overnight.
It can,
Okay.
especially if you're somewhere coastal. But yeah, I did a backpack at Big Basin. I don't want to think about that right now. Last year that it got a little wet, but it wasn't terribly bad. And I have a footprint, so it didn't like seep into my tent at all. And then I think Abdul has a question, Mike.
Okay.
So actually, food is the big concern for a lot of us because we got to eat. So probably usually how long do we plan for a camping, like which is the feasible one, like 7 days or 1 week, 10 days, 3 days, which is better for the camping? And then what kind of food we should plan, because we all have probably different kinds of food habits.
So do you mean backpacking or camping?
Oh, okay, backpacking. Okay. How like so I'm very new to this world. So how are they different, backpacking and the camping?
Backpacking is where you typically put everything, like your tent, your stove, your food, clothes. You put everything in that big backpack that I had, and you walk somewhere to get to your campsite. Sometimes it can be a short hike. Sometimes it can be a longer hike, depending on the type of trip you're doing. Car camping or just camping is where you drive up to a campground, and your car is usually really close to where your campsite is. And you just take everything out of the car and set it up.
Okay. We actually, in backpacking, we just put everything from our home into a bag and then just walk. Wow. I like that.
Yep.
I like that. So
Yeah,
how long did you do like that? Like, how far?
it depends on individual preference. We usually recommend 1, maybe 2 nights to start out with. And then if you like it, you can work your way up to longer trips. Just because it's easier to learn how to kind of pack your bag, how to deal with cooking. It's easier to kind of manage that if you're only out there for a couple nights. And then, once you feel more comfortable, you can go for longer.
Okay, about the food, like because probably you are saying we have to eat heavy food too. Like, do we prefer us to bring meat also, because the meat can get spoiled very fast?
Typically, if you're going to do backpacking, we recommend like the dehydrated food or something like pasta that's not going to spoil. And dehydrated food, it actually comes in some of these pretty tasty meals, and you usually just heat up water and add water to it, and then you can eat it.
Then just pasta. That's it. That's what you are suggesting. And
for backpacking, yes, because it's going to be too hard to do any like complicated cooking if you're just using this pot. Like for this, I can cook couscous in here. Sometimes I'll get the freeze-dried veggies and throw that in some couscous or in some pasta, or I'll get a meal that's already pre-prepared. I think, I can show you what one looks like. So this one looked intriguing to me. I haven't tried it yet. It's a brand I haven't heard of. This is
smoked salmon.
Smoked salmon chili or chowder. So you can see it's pretty lightweight. It's in a package. I have to add hot water to it and then let it sit probably for about 20 minutes. Another thing you might want to consider for snacks would be something, this was in my pantry, something like these little wafers. They're small, lightweight. I can put them in my hip belt pockets. So you do want to make sure that you're bringing snacks as well as like your meals, because you will get hungry when you're out there hiking. And then I see a question about tents. Tents don't really come in temperature ratings like sleeping bags. So typically most tents are going to be 3-season, meaning you can use them in spring, summer, and fall, but not winter. All season tents tend to be a bit heavier and more durable because they're designed for snow. And we only sell one at REI. They're a little bit harder to find in some ways unless you order them online. Oh, sleeping bag. She meant sleeping bag. Sleeping bag, most people use about a 30-degree, maybe a 35-degree in just summer. Because keep in mind in the mountains it can get cold in the evening. maybe an 80-degree day, but sometimes we have those wild temperature fluctuations. And when you're sleeping closer to the ground, you get colder.
And then, do we have any plan? Like I did ask this question in the comments too. Do we have any plan for giving any kind of tutoring, or any kind of session like this for how to record? Because in the backpacking we may have a cam. Do you suggest anything, camera or something like that, so that we can take pictures or videos and then really keep them as memories? Do you suggest certain things like that?
You mean like in person?
Yeah.
We aren't doing any in-person outings right now because of COVID-19.
Yeah. But not yeah. When we are going for COVID-19, so do you suggest us to take a cam so that we can take the pictures and then we can keep them as memories?
Yeah, you can take any kind of camera you want, anything from using your phone, which a lot of people do. I carry a full 35 millimeter sized DSLR with me.
But you have to cut up with the weight.
But you got to carry the weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything comes with some headaches. Yeah.
Just depends on what you want to carry.
Yeah. Okay. So May, are you done? Whoops.
I'm done.
I see.
Thank you all for listening to me drone on for an hour.
Hey, well done. So Stan,
I'm up next, Mike.
I know, but it's 7 o'clock. Is it time for a 5-minute break?
Sure.
Okay, Bruce, this is a good breaking point, so
Okay.
let's take 5 minutes. I'm going to pause the recording.
Okay.
Okay, go.
Hi, I'm Bruce. I too am a Sierra Club outing leader. Been leading day hikes and backpacks for 6 or 7 years, thereabouts. I'm going to talk about 4 different things today. I'm going to talk about clothing, first aid equipment, sanitation and personal needs, and then weight management. I'm going to start with clothing. What I'd like to do, if you have any questions after each of the sections, because they don't really overlap very well, just go ahead and raise your hand, or you can send me a note through chat at any time, and I can try to answer that. Clothing. Clothing, there are 2 primary goals: staying warm and staying dry in changing weather conditions. You get out in the mountains, you can be 75, 80 degrees in the daytime. You can be 30 degrees and snowing at night. I've been on day hikes in the middle of July, where on one hike, I think both Mike and Stan were on this hike. On one hike, we had very, very warm weather to start. And then we got hail, snow, and rain, and temperature dropped probably 45 degrees over the course of an hour. So you sort of need to be prepared for anything that might hit you weather-wise for the time period that you're going to be out. Now in the summertime, I wouldn't recommend taking a 0-degree down coat. That's kind of overkill. But you do need to have clothing for everything from 85 degrees, which hiking is very warm weather, to overnight temperatures that could be down around freezing. So to do that, there's a few things that you need to be aware of. There's 3 basic layers of clothing that you're going to wear. You have a layer closest to your skin, which is needs to be selected based on moisture management, because as your body perspires, you need to have something next to your skin that's going to wick that moisture away. Usually synthetics work the best. That would go for anything from t-shirts, underwear, socks. Some people wear synthetic socks. I don't personally like synthetic socks. I wear wool. But that's personal choice. And your next layer, your mid layer, that's for insulation and temperature management. Okay, so, and there's no limit on how many layers you can bring. you can, and like I said, synthetics are usually the best, but there's a lot to be said for wool. Personally, in the wintertime, I'll take a second layer is always wool. Then I'll put wool on, then over that, I'll usually have 2 or 3 different layers of synthetics. If you're trying to get like a long sleeve shirt for cooler weather, you're going to be in cool weather all the time. Things like, I'll throw out one brand, all the major clothing companies make them. Under Armour, Nike, Adidas, all of them make them. They call them heat gear, whatever. They're very thin, they're very light, they're very flexible, and they provide a lot of warmth. And I'll take, sometimes in the wintertime, I'll wear 2 or 3 layers of that type of clothing. Okay, and they also wick moisture very well. Okay. Pants, I tend to always wear long pants, but I do wear zip-offs just in case. I tend to like long pants so that my legs don't get too chewed up by branches, sticks, rocks, any other, whatever you're running into on the trail. With boots, footwear, personal choice. I've seen people out there hiking, backpacking, wearing sandal type footwear. I've seen people out there hiking wearing mountaineering boots. So it becomes a balance of weight and comfort and the type of terrain you're going to be on, and lastly, your ankles. Me, I have weaker ankles, so I need the support of a full-size, fairly stiff leather hiking boot. Okay? And a couple of the criteria that in picking out boots is how many pairs of socks are you going to wear, and what type of use are you going to put the boots to. If you're going to be, if you want a good pair of sturdy backpacking boots, generally speaking, myself, I wear 2 pairs of wool socks, wool liners, and then wool hiking socks. And I do that year round. And no, my feet do not get overly warm in the summertime, because wool will let heat out in the summer and retains the heat in the wintertime. So it's actually quite comfortable. It also wicks the moisture very well. So, but that's a personal choice. Whatever you personally like to use, if you're going to whatever store to pick out, try on boots and pick out a pair of boots or footwear, you need to make sure that you're trying them on with whatever socks you like to hike in. Otherwise, what happens is you're either too loose in the boot or you're too tight in the boot. Neither of those is a good thing. It makes you prone to blisters. And you want to avoid getting blisters on your feet, if at all possible, when you're hiking into the backcountry and you're 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 15, 20 miles away from a trailhead. It can be a very uncomfortable hike getting back out of there for a day or 2 days. The only material that I tend to recommend anybody and everybody avoid is cotton. Cotton's really comfortable, but if cotton gets wet, it loses all of its insulating or cooling properties, and it takes forever to dry out. The synthetics get wet, they dry out very quickly while they're still on your body. Okay. An outer layer, things to consider for an outer layer is, what are you protecting yourself? Do you need something that's warm, or do you need something that's going to protect you from the elements, rain and wind? And my suggestion is I always take a Gore-Tex jacket. I have 2 different ones that I use, one for the summertime, which is very, very light, packs down into size of a softball. And in the wintertime, I have a heavier one that I use that's big enough to put over a down parka if I'm out in the wintertime and it gets really cold. That sort of covers clothing, headgear. Everybody has different choices on hats. I tend to like a brim hat that has a brim goes all the way around, keeps the sun off the back of my neck, keeps the sun off my face, I'm less prone to get sunburned that way. And for some of us, sunburn can be a big problem. But some sun protection is always a good idea. Sunglasses are also critical, especially if you're at high elevation. The higher the elevation you get to, the more you need a good pair of sunglasses that are 100% UV rating, and depending on how prone you are to glare, polarized lenses are recommended as well, or a very, very dark lens that's rated somewhere between 10 to 13, 14, 15% light transmission. That means it's blocking 90 to 80, 85 to 90% of the incoming light. Those will protect your eyes, especially in the wintertime. If you're out hiking in the wintertime, that sun bounces off the snow, comes back up. You've probably heard people talk about getting snowblind. That's how you get snowblind. And what happens is the reflection of the light coming up off the snow or any reflective surface, you can get it off of water, a lake, a river, anything, can burn your retinas. So you need to be careful for that as well. That's what I have on clothing. I'm going to try to go through some of the stuff a little bit quicker because we only have 45 minutes left and I want to leave Stan some time. So does anybody have any questions on clothing?
Got a chat entry.
Let's see. If you have comfortable hiking boots for day hiking, do you need to consider something different for backpacking? Will they be okay? Maybe yes, maybe no. It depends on what the boots are. I use the same boots for both. The heavier your pack, the more support you want on your ankles and your boots. But generally, if you're on a fairly smooth trail, you're not on an uneven, rough surface, the heavier load isn't going to make that much of a difference on boot selection compared to a day hike or backpacking. I've run into people who are through hiking either the PCT or the Tahoe Rim Trail, who are out there in trail runners, sneakers. So it just depends on what you're comfortable in. Okay, first aid. Personal first, yes, you had a question? Mike, could you outboot Abdul?
So yeah, the question is, so can we have t-shirts or something, this kind of clothes, no jeans? What do you mean by synthetic clothes, like?
Nylon synthetics.
Nylon.
You don't want to wear blue jeans hiking. If you think about blue jeans, are really, I know people who hike in them, but I find them very restrictive. If you're just walking down the sidewalk, they're fine. But if you're on a rough trail where you're going up and over rock, you're climbing up a mountainside on, if you're in desolation, you're spending a lot of time on granite. It's not comfortable in blue jeans, especially when you've got somewhere between 25 and 40 pounds on your back.
Yeah.
Blue jeans also, if they get wet, they're also very heavy. If they get wet, they're going to stay wet for a long time. And all of that water that gets into the material of the blue jeans, that's extra weight that you're now carrying on your body.
Yeah.
Okay. Same thing with just, cotton t-shirts. I wouldn't wear a cotton t-shirt. Get a, you can get synthetic t-shirts anywhere. They sell them at Walmart. You can get them at REI. You can get them at Under Armour store, Nike stores. All the manufacturers sell that type of stuff. They're just made out of synthetics. They're a nylon-based material. A lot of them have their own brand, names for the material they use. You know, and they wick the moisture. So you just want to make sure that all your clothes are will wick moisture away from your body, and that they are quick drying.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, first aid kits. There are probably 50,000 lists of what you should have in your first aid kit that is out there. One place you can go that has a ton of material, if you go to the REI website, and if you look up at the very top banner, they have something, a tab that says expert advice. You just click on that and you get a whole bunch of categories of different things, and including first aid, things, the type of things that basic things that you need to have in a small kit like this. There's a whole bunch of sizes. I usually, most times I carry a little bit bigger kit. You can see the difference in size. Okay, that's because I'm a Sierra Club hike leader, so I have to carry enough first aid equipment to take care of anybody that might get hurt in addition to myself. This is kind of overkill, but there are, if you're going to go backpacking for a week, you're probably going to have a first aid kit that's about that big. For a weekend or for a day hike, this is probably about the right size. Type of things that you need in there. You need moleskin for blisters. You need some type of antiseptic cream in case you get a cut or abrasion, like Neosporin, sunblock, some insect repellent, tube of chapstick, duct tape. Duct tape can be a bandage. It can be used to secure a bandage to your skin. You can use duct tape to fix a boot, fix a pack. You know, anything that needs an adhesive, you can use duct tape for. A small ace bandage. I always carry a small ace bandage. I always carry what's called a SAM splint. I've got this little bag of extra stuff. It's a SAM splint, not very big. It unfolds. Okay. And what you have is something that's narrow enough that if you sprain your ankle, you can put this around your ankle, put your socks back on, and you can still get your foot in your boot. So with a sprained ankle, you can hike out. Might not be super comfortable, but you're gonna get out. And the main thing is getting out to get to somewhere where you can get assistance. Let's see, I'm looking for more props. Okay, multi-tools. There's a whole ton of multi-tools out there. Other things that are in your Band-Aids, some whatever type of painkiller you like. Good ones are ibuprofen because it's also an anti-inflammatory. Okay, that helps. Tylenol is good because it works fast. Okay. Multi-tools, there's a lot of different types. There's probably 20 different brands that are out there. The things that you need to make sure you have on them: scissors, so they can cut tape. A lot of them will have pliers or and nail files. You also need to make sure that you have a tool that has a knife. A little bigger one has a better knife to use. They just all fold out. Let's see, knife blade, there's a knife blade. So they turn into knives, into a knife, so you can cut things if you need to. The duct tape can, I've had to use duct tape to fix a boot that came apart. I was out hiking and had my boot actually separate, where the sole of the boot separated from the bottom of the boot, just came off the tread. And I used duct tape to get back to the trailhead.
I've got a question on chat.
Yes, electrical tape is too stretchy. Okay, duct tape is a lot stronger. I think it's a lot more, the adhesive works a lot better. And you can also, with your scissors, if you need to tape a bandage on something, if a gauze pad or something like that, or you can use duct tape to do that as well. Okay, so, but you can use either. They sell that little roll of duct tape. They outdoor stores sell them. I've never seen it I've never seen the small rolls like that at Lowe's or Home Depot, but they do sell small rolls like that at REI and probably other outdoor stores. The other thing about first aid kits is when you're packing your pack, you want to keep them accessible. Okay, so you don't want it buried in the bottom or the middle of your pack where you have to unload a whole bunch of stuff to get to it. You want to keep it. This is not a full backpack. This is my day pack, but it's easier and it was more accessible. You got a top pocket, stick it in the top pocket. Easy to get to. One other thing that is good to have, safety equipment, really not first aid, but safety equipment, whistle. They get loud. Okay? And the whistle should be attached somewhere where you can get to it easily without having to take your pack off, because you could fall and be in a position where you can't take your pack off to get to it. If it's on a strap on your pack, you just reach over with the other hand and you can get to it. Someone was asking questions. I remember a question earlier about cameras. I carry a full-size 35mm size camera. It goes right on here, sits right on my shoulder, and the weight of it gets spread out onto the shoulder straps. You don't really feel it as much. Okay, 2 down. Anybody have questions on first aid? No? Okay, we'll move to sanitation. Oh, one other piece of safety equipment. Headlamp. Headlamp and spare batteries. When you're in your tent, headlamp becomes your reading lamp. You need to get up in the middle of the night to use the facilities. You take a headlamp with you so you don't trip over stuff and have to use the sand splint. I usually keep my headlamp in a little Ziploc bag with a whole bunch of extra batteries. That way, I've always got spare batteries if they go dead. You just never know. Batteries are temperature sensitive. So if you get stuck in really cold weather and you're using your headlamp, they don't last as long. Okay.
Got a question on chat.
Well, right now there probably aren't any, Jessica, because pretty much pretty much everybody is shut down for any type of guided trips. Usually Sierra Club, we usually have between 1 and 4 maybe 1 to 4 per month going on when we're able to do hikes. And they can be anything from 1 night, 2-day with 1 night, a weekend. A lot of them are midweek. It's always my preference is always to go midweek because it's less crowded. And you don't want to be out backpacking on a weekend where you run into Boy Scout Troop 64 on the other side of the lake, and you got a whole bunch of 9 to 13-year-olds making a lot of noise. So if but there are everything from one night, 2-day backpacking trips all the way up to full week backpacking trips that will go on generally from around late May until early October. This year is kind of unusual because we're sort of out of luck. Actually, the lake that's in the background is a pretty good place to go backpacking. It's 5 mile. That's Emigrant Lake out of the Caples Lake trailhead. It's a nice lake. There's a few really nice camp spots there, campsites there. And it's about a 5 mile hike with maybe a 800 to 1,000 feet elevation gain. So a pretty reasonable hike. Sanitation. Let's see. First, let's talk about the, no, I'll talk, I get this out. Okay. First off, you need to be as far away from water as possible. I think 300 feet, 300 to 400 feet is usually a pretty good rule of thumb before you find a spot to go and relieve yourself. Urinating is no problem. You just go find a spot behind a tree and you go. If you're out for more than a day, you got to do number two. You need some equipment. This is what I carry. Okay, I've got a small partial roll of toilet paper that I carry with me. I keep it all in a Ziploc bag, a Ziploc bag that goes from one pack to another, depending on what I'm doing. If I'm doing day hikes, I take the same exact bag. Okay, everything's in its own Ziploc bag. Can't have enough Ziploc bags. Okay. Shovel for a cat hole. They recommend you dig them 6 inches deep. And if you ever looked at one of these things, you'll see these little markings. They're 6 inches long. So that's how you know when you're deep enough. You make sure you got the whole blade of the little shovel in there. Okay, the only thing that stays in the hole is your number two. Nothing else stays in there. Okay, your toilet paper, and it's the same thing if you have to go number one. Okay, and if you like to use toilet paper, ladies, you can't leave it out there. What I like to do is in the same bag, I keep 2 Ziploc bags, a little Ziploc bag to use toilet paper, and a bigger Ziploc bag to put the little Ziploc bag with the used toilet paper. I like to do 2, that's odor management. Okay, and I try to use the freezer bags because they're more durable and they're stronger and they're less likely to get punctured or torn than the thinner storage bags. And it's not something you want to get punctured or torn when you stuff it back in your pack somewhere because these are kind of small, they're odd shaped, and it's going to get banged around with other stuff that's in your pack that might be a little bit firmer. So, anybody have questions on, oh, I'm not done yet. The 10 essentials. There are probably 500 lists of what constitutes the 10 essentials for being out in the wilderness. Everybody has a little bit different idea about what they are. Give you an idea, a few of them you're going to have covered. You know, one of them shelter. You've got a tent. Okay, so you've got that covered. But you know, it is. Okay. The main things that you need to have are compass. Even if you use your cell phone to navigate, batteries on cell phones go dead. Okay. Compass apps on cell phones don't always work depending on where you are. So you need to have a compass because they will work wherever you are. Waterproof matches in case you need to light a fire. And it's always a good idea to have redundant systems. I carry a little lighter, waterproof matches, and I carry one of these. This is a magnesium fire block. You can see the difference in color. I don't know if you can see that. That's magnesium. You use your knife, you scrape down it, and it makes sparks. Anybody watch Survivor? They give them little blocks. That's these. And that's what they're using. Okay. You also have in here, you can see this little goldish thing, space blanket. Okay. You can use a space blanket as a shelter. You can use it as a blanket to keep you warm. You can use it to wrap yourself up in. I always keep an extra chapstick in with my 10 essentials. And I've got what's called a survival blanket that I picked up Ace Hardware. $6 at Ace Hardware in 2013. Probably costs more now. But you can see the picture. It's almost sort of like a little bivy sack. So it's just an extra layer of protection against the elements. That's basically the 10 elements. The whistle would be on there. The headlamp would be on there. If you are, a paper map is another one that you should have with you, because you can't always guarantee that you have phone power. If you don't want to carry a paper map, and you're going to use your cell phone, then you have the issue of power management. And then you have another issue that comes up when we get into the next section of waste management, and that's weight. You can get a battery pack, but a battery pack's going to weigh half a pound. Okay. Now, if you're going out for a multi-day trip, you probably get, for 4 or 5 days, more than the length of battery in your phone. You're probably going to want to take either a spare battery pack that's fully charged or a solar charger. And what you can do if you do use a solar charger, these things are actually pretty cool. They've got hooks on them. You can see these holes. You put the holes on the back of your pack, and then it gets lost in the background. And then you take the solar charger and you just attach it to the back of your pack, and you charge your battery of your phone while you're hiking. Now it's kind of, when you get to wherever you're camping, you can do the same thing. You can set it up and hook up your phone, and you can charge it there. They work pretty good. I've used them. To be honest, I haven't used it backpacking. I've never needed to. When I've gone on extended treks, I've been to Nepal a couple times. Getting power to charge phones is kind of spotty there. You just charge it as you hike. Okay. Let's see, anybody, the other things on hygiene, you're going to want to have a Ziploc bag with your toothpaste, soap, towel, any, toothbrush, any personal needs you need to keep yourself clean. And we'll go from there. Okay, let's see. Oh, Maribel had said Yosemite Conservancy is offering trips, although you might want to wait a bit. Yeah, probably not a good time with the fires right now, since everything is pretty much closed. I know the Forest Service has closed all of the national forests right now. You are not supposed to be going day hiking, day use, camping, anything. Everything is shut down right now because of the fires. We've got fires fairly close by here as well. Just 45 miles, 50 miles as the crow flies east of here. We have some fires up near Crystal Basin and Gurley Creek, which is what they're maybe about 10 miles northeast of Pollock Pines. Okay, weight management. I'm gonna use Stan's line from the last session he did. At first ask, has everybody read the book or seen the movie Wild? Cheryl Stade's book. Okay, well, if you've seen the movie or if you've read the book, there's 2 scenes that are really sort of put this whole conversation in perspective. The first one was early in the book and early in the movie. Reese Witherspoon, who played Cheryl Stade in the movie, is in a motel in the southern part of California, getting ready to go out and hike the Pacific Crest Trail. She gets dropped off by her abusive boyfriend, or I don't know if it's boyfriend or husband, or gets dropped off at the motel, and she's got this pack that had to have weighed way too much. Okay, she's trying to get this thing on. She couldn't. She finally got it up onto the end of the bed. She got her shoulders into the pack, straps it on, stands up, and falls right over on her back on the floor. Later in the movie, there's a scene in Kennedy Meadows. Okay. And Kennedy Meadows is a kind of famous place on the Pacific Crest Trail. if you ever watched any of the movies about through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, and there's a whole ton of them about it, Kennedy Meadows has bins of gear that through hikers leave behind when they get there, because they realized they did not ask themselves the crucial question before they loaded their pack, and that is, do I really need this? So I always say, before you pack it, ask it, do I really need this? Okay, if you're going out for 2 days, you don't need to take 4 days worth of clothes. Okay? You can take 2 days worth of clothing if you are not comfortable wearing the same clothes for 2 days, or you can just take enough layers to keep yourself warm and dry, and that's it. Less to carry. You don't need to carry 4 days worth of food if you're only going to be eating one dinner and one breakfast on the trail. Okay, so like May commented, it becomes picking your gear and managing your weight becomes a function of compromising comfort and weight. In selecting a backpack, it's another thing, and I don't remember if May mentioned it or not. Some packs are very, very light. You can get ultralight backpacking packs that weigh a pound and a half. Or you can get a heavier pack, like the one May uses. Mine is similar to May, it's a different brand. I use a Gregory because they fit me. My pack probably weighs 3.5 to 4 pounds. The difference is you're going to load your pack up with a bunch of things that have a certain amount of weight to them. It's going to be probably somewhere between 20 and 35 pounds. And you're going to need to be comfortable. If you're prone to a bad back or sore back or shoulder soreness, you don't want an ultralight pack. You want a pack that's going to hold the load well and get the weight distributed in such a way that you're not carrying it on your shoulders and you're carrying most of it on your hips. So the hip belt becomes very, very critical, and the suspension on the pack becomes very critical. That's what carries the weight. And loading your pack, there's a couple of rules of thumb that I always recommend to everybody, and that is, put all of the light stuff at the bottom and all of the heavy stuff at the top. Okay, and it seems counterintuitive, but it's not, because the main weight goes to your hips, but when you have the heavier weight forward, you don't have the bottom of the pack pushing down against your hips. Okay? So it just balances your load a lot better. I'll put my sleeping bag in the very, very bottom of my pack. Most backpacking specific packs will have a divider at the very bottom and a compartment that opens on the very bottom for your sleeping bag. I'll put my sleeping bag in there. I will put my sleeping pad in there, and I will put anything else that I have that's light that I might need to access easily in that compartment as well. A rain jacket is a good thing to stick in there on the outside of your sleeping bag. Okay, it does two things. One, it keeps the sleeping bag from getting moisture coming in from the outside of your pack. It's pushing it more up against your back, and it's making the jacket easy to access. Then as you fill the pack up, the clothing would be the next thing that will go in through the top, on top of your, where your sleeping bag compartment is. Okay? And then whatever else you're bringing, you just stack it in on from there. Tents usually can go on the side, because one of the problems in packing here, and Stan's going to talk about this in just a moment, is bears and managing your food against bears. There's two things that you can use that are allowed in some, one's allowed some places and not in others. There's a it's called an Ursack. Stan will show you what it looks like. It's a Kevlar bag. You tie it around a tree. It has a very heavy duty Ziploc bag that you put your food in. That takes up a lot less space than a full bear canister. But like Yosemite is a good example. You can't hike in Yosemite without using a bear can. Okay, and bear cans are big, they're bulky, and they're heavy. And those usually go, because of that, you put them at the very top of your backpack. Okay, on top of your clothes, on top of anything else that you're going to pack in. It's the last thing you put in. And the reason is because you want that high in the pack by where your shoulder straps are meeting your shoulder. Okay. Most backpacks also have pockets in the lid, the flap that goes over the top. There's a pocket on the top, there's a pocket on the bottom. That's a good place to stick your first aid kit, your headlamp, gloves, if you're carrying gloves, if you're carrying a map, things like, I don't know where I put it. Oh, no. Like your potty kit is good for a side pocket. Most backpacks have two big longitudinal side pockets that run down either side of the main pocket. That's a good place to put something like that. Small items can go in there. Tools, most hip belts have pockets on them. That's a perfect place to put a knife or whatever tool you're carrying. Why? Because you have easy access. If anything happens, if you fall down, you can't get out of your pack, but you can reach your pocket, you can reach your knife. And I hate to say it, you can cut the backpack off of you, but you know what? You brought duct tape, so you can always put it back together.
Right.
That's the basics on loading and balancing your pack. You want, the other thing you have to remember that's also high in your pack, fairly high in your pack, is if you're, depending on what you're using for water, if you're using a bladder, okay, that's in your pack toward the top along your back, okay, with your hose coming out. If you're not using a bladder and you're using a water bottle, that's usually on your hip belt, okay, or in a side pocket on your pack. So let's see. Okay, and with that, that's mine. You have any other questions? Well, that was easy. I got off pretty easy. Yeah, with that, I'll introduce our next presenter. Stan certified both May and I as overnight Sierra Club backpack leaders. That's how long he's been doing this. Stan and I, about a year and a half ago, we're in a group of people that went to South America. We went to Patagonia and did a 2-week trek down there, I guess, Stan, through Patagonia. And while we're down there, one of the other people in our group gave Stan his new nickname, which is the Stanimal.
Okay, well, I want to talk about navigation. Thank you, Bruce.
You're welcome, Stan.
And all you folks have been on hikes in the Sierras, so all you guys know about maps and compasses. Recommend, if you don't have one, buy a good compass, $15, $20 maybe, somewhere in there. Don't get one of the cheapy ones. The maps, there's a lot of really good maps out these days. This one is for Desolation Wilderness. So is this one here. One's by USDA, and the other's by Tom Harrison Maps. So they're pretty useful. What I'd recommend you do is when you're working on your trip planning, get the map out maybe a week beforehand and start looking at your route, start looking at the topo lines, figuring out what kind of elevation gain and loss you're going to have. The other thing that I wanted to mention was if you don't want to bring the whole map, you can take your map to Staples, and for about 75 cents, you can have one section of it blown up. This is a 8 by 11, but on the big map book, this only covered about 3 inches. So I had him blow it up to a full page size so that it's a lot easier to read when you're out on the trail. So for GPS purposes, Mike and myself and Bruce use GPS applications and our smartphones. The two applications that we like best are Gaia GPS and AllTrails. And you can go find those at your iPhone store or your Samsung store or whatnot. The basic versions of these are free. The premium versions are maybe about $30. So you might try out the free version first time to see if you like it. But they're pretty useful, and that's a very good supplement to your map and compass. And like Bruce mentioned, you don't want to strictly rely on your cell phone for navigation because batteries are fallible. So having the map and compass is useful. Having a portable battery pack is useful if you're going to be on a multi-night trip. So
You have a comment in chat, Stan. Can you see chat?
I can't hear you. Go ahead.
You've got a question in chat. Can you see the chat?
Yes. Click on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It depends on what you want to do with it. You know, if the question, Stan, was, would you recommend to purchase AllTrails or Gaia Pro or just use the free versions?
My recommendation is to try out the free versions of both of them, and see if you like them, and then decide at a later date which one you want to buy. But you can go online to GaiaGPS.com or alltrails.com and read it up on it. You can also find out more on your iPhone store or your Samsung store, whatever. Personally, my own preference is Gaia GPS. My wife likes AllTrails the best. AllTrails, they have a lot of pre-loaded trails in there, and you can research those at home. Both of them, you can download maps at home when you have your Wi-Fi going. And then when you're out in the woods, I like to shut off my airplane mode, or I like to turn the cell phone on airplane mode so that you don't wear out your battery quite as fast. And this,
they're both pretty good. Each of them are pretty good at power management. If you're in airplane mode, they don't use a lot of battery. I think AllTrails is better.
yeah.
Personally.
But the point is, if you put your phone on airplane mode for the entire trip, you're going to save a lot of battery juice. And that forces the phone to only rely on satellite input for navigation rather than, otherwise the phone is trying to find a cell tower the whole time you're out walking around in the wilderness. And that eats up a whole lot of power. So you put it on airplane mode, and then that still allows you to navigate using your GPS. Uh, so anyway, I would recommend that start looking at your maps and your route well before your trip. And you can also go on YouTube and find tutorials on how to read a topo map. So don't wait for the night before to start downloading your maps. So any questions on navigation?
Got a question in chat about which maps to use. I think topo maps are recommended for, on all trails in Gaia.
They're both equally good, I think. It's just a matter of your personal preference. You can also buy the USGS topographical maps that are available in backpacking stores. You can also join National Geographic and download maps from their website, assuming you have a printer. So, any other questions? Okay, let's talk about getting clean water. There's three general categories of acquiring clean water. First are the water purification tablets, such as the iodine tablets and so forth. Some of these are a two-part process so as to get rid of any chemical taste. Some of the tablets take 10 to 30 minutes to be effective. The iodine tablets were actually developed during World War II. And so there's some pretty good derivations that have gotten a lot better since then. Second category for getting clean water are water filters. And the older filters had a hard ceramic cartridge filter. Newer ones have a semi-permeable membrane. This is one of the cartridge type filters. And this one's from KD Din. You put one hose in your lake water or river water or the brown water container. The other end of the hose goes in your clean water container, and you just pump, and voila, you get clean water. These work really good. I've been using these for years and been pretty lucky. A newer development on getting clean water is the gravity filters and drip filters. This is a drip filter, and you take a bag and get your river water and lake water. And this one's about 3 liters. You fill it up full of lake water. You screw this onto the top of it. You hold it upside down, and your filtered water comes out, and you can drain it into your cook pot or into your bike bottle or whatever you're using for water. So these are pretty workable. They're lightweight. They're more flexible than the pumps, and they taste a lot better than the tablets. The third category for water purification are the electronic UV devices, such as your SteriPen. These rely on a battery to sterilize your water. And so you stick the SteriPen in your pot of water or bottle of water and stirred around for a period of time, X number of seconds, and then that kills all the bacteria and so forth. Drawback on these, I've seen them fail. One of them that I saw just quit working. Another one, the batteries decided to quit when someone was out in the wilderness. So they had to borrow somebody else's pump filter. So there's a little bit of a drawback on those. Any questions on that? Okay. Next, I want to talk about hiking poles. A lot of types of poles on the market. There's one piece. There's the telescoping type. There's the type that are fold up, that are held together with a bungee cord. My own personal preference is the hiking poles with a positive cam locking attachment. So you extend the pole out as needed and snap the cam in the right location. And then you have the adjustable pole that's as long as you need it. One of the other issues on hiking poles is steel tips versus the rubber tips. And your poles usually come with steel tips. And for standard walking surfaces, the steel tips are going to work fine. However, if you're walking up in the Sierras on smooth granite, the rubber tips are much more useful. Assuming this is a piece of granite, and here's your steel tip hiking pole, your pole is likely to skitter if it's placed at an angle on the glacially carved or glacially polished granite. With the rubber tip, you place the pole at an angle, and it's likely to grip a little bit better, kind of like a car tire. So the rubber tips do wear out after a couple of years and you have to replace them. But my own personal preference is the rubber tips give you a little more traction. When I'm backpacking, I believe in the mantra of 4 feet are better than 2 feet. And when I have a 28, 30-pound pack, it's real nice to have a couple of hiking poles to keep me right side up. So anything else? Any questions on the poles? Nope. Okay. In environmentally sensitive areas such as Machu Picchu, you have to have rubber tips on your poles, as they believe that the metal tips plow up the damp earth on the trails, and it causes a lot of environmental degradation with all the heavy foot traffic. So if you're going overseas, place like that, rubber tips are more useful. Okay, last topic, bear proofing. Now this also includes rodent and raccoon proofing. There's 3 general options for bear proofing your food overnight. The first one, this is really old school. You put your food in a stuff sack, you tie a rope on it, and you throw it over the tree. Real old school. Several years ago, they developed really hard plastic containers for bear canisters. These work pretty good, but they're heavy. This one weighs about 3 pounds. It'll hold enough food for close to a weekend. I'm sorry, close to a week of backpacking. After a while, they developed ultra lightweight aluminum and Kevlar bear canisters that are very lightweight. They hold a lot of food, and they are still absolutely bear proof. They have screw-on type lids. This one's Bruce's, by the way, which I need to get back to him. So the next development in bear proofing and rodent proofing is something that Bruce already showed you one time. This is called an Ursack. It's made of Kevlar. It's a real heavy canvas-like cloth, but it's really strong. It's got a rope drawstring. But the real secret to these is what you put inside it. This is called a odor-proof bag or a vapor barrier bag. And you put your food in this bag. It's like a big giant Ziploc baggie, but it's extremely thick, and it keeps the odors in or the odors out. It's called a vapor barrier. And these work surprisingly well. We had an experience about 5 years ago backpacking up in Desolation Wilderness, and we had a bear in our camp very early in the morning on the second day. And the bear was trying to get to one of the women's food bags that she had hung up in a tree. And the bear was standing on his hind legs, and he was trying to use the food bag for a piñata. And he was just about touching it. Well, we managed to try to scare the bear away. The bear climbed to the tree. Finally, the bear came back down after a while, and then we chased him away again. The bear walked right past about a half a dozen of these that were tied to a log a ways away from the campsite. And the bear walked right by all the Ursacks with a vapor barrier inside. And the bear didn't even look at these things. So as long as they're clean and you have ultra clean vapor barrier inside, they work good. The Achilles tendon on these is if you get greasy fingerprints on the outside of it while you're cooking or washing up, you've blown it. Greasy fingerprints, the bear's going to smell that a mile away, and he's going to go right to it. So you have to keep the Ursack and the vapor barrier scrupulously clean. So that's the main steps on that. Any questions on bear proofing, rodent proofing, raccoon proofing? Okay, no questions? Okay.
No, one.
Okay.
Where? Oh, right. Okay.
Abdul, Mike.
Abdul?
No, Christina.
Okay, so regarding bears and other animals when you're out backpacking, what about like deodorant and maybe a lotion or wipes? Toothpaste, are they attracted to that kind of stuff, or is that just a myth?
Yes,
Yes, they are.
Yes,
They need to
they
go
are. And throw that in your vapor barrier as well.
All of it in there.
Everything in here.
Okay.
And
And do you throw out the stuff, or do you put in there also the stuff that you're packing out?
yes,
Yes.
have a separate vapor barrier for your garbage.
Okay. So you 2 would be good. Okay.
And, the one I used for garbage, I took a Sharpie and I put a great big G on
Okay.
the outside of it so that I don't commingle stuff.
Good. Okay.
Um, And then this goes in the Ursack also.
Okay. Thank you.
What you can do is you sort of, the first time you go out, you take 2 brand new bags when you first use it. The second time you go out, the bag you used for garbage the first time, you throw that away. You get another new one and you rotate them so that the second time you take a bag out, that's your garbage bag.
Well, they are recyclable, and after your trip, you go home, you wash it out really good in hot soapy water in your kitchen sink, put it out in the garage to dry for a week, and you're good to go. But you need to wash out the inside as well as the outside. But I like to keep using the garbage bag over and over again, only for garbage. So that way I don't get things messed up. Abdul, you had a question?
No, but Susie did. She said, will perfume attract bears?
Yes.
Yes, more than likely, it likely will. Same with aftershave, deodorant, toothpaste.
Toothpaste, anything that has an odor.
Yeah.
Chapstick, insect repellent, sunscreen, pretty much anything that has any kind of odor needs to go in the bear can or the bear bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Did that answer your questions?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay.
Abdul, Mike.
Okay. Want to thank everybody for showing up tonight for our class. And if you're not a Sierra Club member, Sierra Club does need your support. They fight for clean air, clean water. They try to protect things like desolation wilderness. So it's a really beneficial organization. You can go to www.sierraclub.org, and that's the main website for the National Sierra Club. And you can join at that website, and then you can find out about all the backpack trips, outings, international trips, and so forth. So www.sierraclub.org.
Got a couple other questions. Abdul had a question, Mike, if you could unmute him.
Okay.
And Maribel had a question about bear spray and flares. No, I've never carried either. Not here.
No.
Black bears are not. They just want your food. They're more afraid of you than you are of them. They don't want to mess with you. You can scare them away by banging pots, or just putting your arms up. Get a couple people putting their arms up. Go away, bear! Go away! And they'll take off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, if you're in a place where there's grizzly bears, yes, you want bear spray.
Yeah.
Grizzly bears are not.
I would 100% agree with Bruce. One thing, bear sprays at Glacier National Park, you have to bring bear spray if you want to go backpacking in the backcountry.
They have grizzly bears.
Yeah, for at Glacier.
Yeah, Yellowstone's the same thing.
Yeah, at Yosemite National Park, they do not allow bear spray. Okay, and that's even on their website. So difference between the black bears and the grizzly bears, and the belief that the local bears are a little more timid, a lot less aggressive, but they still will attack if you get goofy and get too close. So it's always best to give them a lot of distance, but that's off on a different topic, and you can probably Google that kind of thing, answer all your questions, and find a wealth of information about how to deal with bears under different scenarios. If you go backpacking along Point Reyes or along the coast, your big issue is going to be raccoons, but I think you want to follow the same precautions because the raccoons are really smart and they can figure out what you're doing a lot of times. So, anything else?
Abdul, did you have a question? You're on mute.
Yeah. So, how height the bag or the bear, bear protect, like what is that, bear can or something like that? How height we have to keep it from our from the bottom, like?
Okay, these I just tie them at shoulder height.
Okay.
I don't try to make them put up. I don't put them up at the top of the tree. So I just shoulder height where I can reach it and untie the knot. The bear canisters, we just leave them on the ground 100 feet away from where our tent is. Okay, because if there's food inside here that's attracting bears, you don't want the bear messing around right next to your tent.
Yeah.
You'd rather have the bear, a couple 100 feet away.
Yeah.
The bears will pick the can. They will smell food that's in a can.
Yeah.
They will pick the cans up. They will throw them around. They will try to bang them against rocks.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be too close to your tent. Hanging, if you're trying to hang a stuff sack in a tree,
Yeah.
like that, you probably want it
20 feet up.
20 feet at least off the ground.
Yeah.
How much? 20 feet.
Yeah, and you need to get it way out on a fairly small limb, because bears climb trees and they can climb out on, you don't want to put it on a big branch that you can hold on to and walk on, because they'll climb up and they'll walk out there.
Yeah, easily. They are better climber than us.
So, but the tying the food up in the tree, there's better alternatives. Okay, that putting the food in a stuff sack and putting it up in the tree, there's more risk to a bear getting your food than with the other two alternatives. The bear canister or the earth sack, your odds are better that your food is not going to get.
So how is this one is better than the blue one? I didn't understand the difference between these two. The blue one, you are showing me the blue one, and then this white one. Both are
The white one is the earth sack. The blue one is just a stuff sack. It's probably something that a tent came in, or a sleeping bag came in, or you just bought a stuff sack to put clothes in a pack. It's just a cloth bag. Okay. And
this is just an old nylon stuff sack for a sleeping bag.
Okay.
They're all over the place.
Well, I think the thing that we haven't mentioned is that the earth sack being Kevlar, it's indestructible. The bear cannot bite through it. So no way the bear can actually get into the bag. Whereas with the blue bag,
yeah, they'll tear those open.
they can tear it to shreds.
That's why you have to throw it up in a tree.
Yeah.
And putting it up in a tree is having backpacked in the days when that was the only option. I can tell you that can take an hour and a half sometimes to be able to get it up. If you're lucky, you can get it up there in 15, 20 minutes, if you're lucky.
And it's one of the more hazardous activities, because when you throw the rock up, the rock comes down and hit you in the head.
And then you have to figure out what to do with the rope, because the bears are not stupid. They see it, they see the rope, they'll go to wherever you tie it off, and they'll untie it.
Wow.
It's not
Or
foolproof.
the bear will chew through the rope because it's got your fingerprint oil on there. It's got your body oil on the rope. they see the rope, they smell the rope, they chew it for a while, and the rope breaks, and the bag falls down. About 5 years ago on a backpack, overnight, something put a big tooth mark on one of these. And it was a big 1/2-inch indentation on one of these. We never saw the bear, but in the morning there was this big, you know, thing on it, but he could not get it open. So
Yeah.
it worked.
Yeah, one of the other advantages of a beer can, you know, I don't know if it's offsets the weight disadvantage or not, but you have a chair.
Yeah.
You can sit on.
Yeah, it's a perfect size for a camp chair. So when you're cooking, you dump all your food out and you can sit on your canister. So dual duty. Anybody else? Dave, you're awful quiet over there.
All
Yeah.
right, I think we're done.
Okay. Thank you all again for participating in our second annual Sierra Club Mother Lode Chapter class. We hope to keep doing this. So hopefully we'll be posting it on Mother Lode Chapter and Meetup some future date. So anyway, Sierra Club needs your support. So think about joining if you're not a member.